They're not going to be concentration camps in America. I don't know what that means. Don't play the game of I'm not running away. Anti-Semites in Congress. Jews will be burned alive. What has to happen for you to read the writing on the wall and for you to say this is no longer my home, I need to go home? Welcome back to Tech to Tanks. As you know, for the past 2 years, Israel's continuously been accused of genocide. We addressed that. Of course, there's no genocide in Gaza. How do we know that? Because if Israel wanted to commit genocide, Gaza would be flattened. And if you have any doubts about Israel's military capabilities, just take a look at what Israel did or what Israel did to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So Israel does not lack military capabilities, and the only reason that Gaza is not flattened is because Israel chooses not to flatten it, because Israel does not want to commit genocide. Furthermore, if Israel wanted to commit genocide, it wouldn't send in foot soldiers. So there's no genocide. That being said, there is an actual genocide going on, one that Israel is preventing. And that is, of course, what's going on in Syria with Jolani's people, if that's how you pronounce his name, massacring, butchering, beheading, and much worse, the Druze community in Syria. Many people are asking, what's going on here? Why is Israel attacking? It's really very simple, and that is that the Druze community, by the way, this is important to mention, they're not Muslims. They are not Muslims. They are a very loyal group to Israel, to the state of Israel. They serve in the army and much more, and so Israel, being the moral, I would say the moral light and the country with the most moral clarity, is doing everything that Israel can to protect those Jews, including going into Syria, both on foot and from the air, to deter these Jolani barbarians who are doing what we just said. It's terrible. And really, like most other things, the world should be thanking Israel. Of course, no one else in the world, no other country is stepping up for the Druze, only Israel. And so the world should be thanking Israel. Of course, what's happening? Israel's being vilified yet again because we are massacring Syrians. Again, Israel is killing terrorists who are trying to butcher the Druze. It's unbelievable how no matter what Israel does, no matter how just and no matter how moral and no matter how right Israel's actions are, Israel will continue to be vilified. And again, you can argue about Gaza, you can argue about Judea and Samaria, you cannot argue about Syria, okay? There is absolutely no argument to be made that what Israel did and is continuing to do in Syria is not justified, and yet, despite that, the hypocrisy is showing its ugly face yet again, and Israel is being blamed. It's crazy. But just, again, high level, the terrorists of the Syrian regime, the new Syrian regime, have made it abundantly clear what their goals are, and that is to kill all the Druze and then move on to the next community over there, and they're not going to stop. And so Israel has to continue doing what it can, and it's not easy because Israel's opening yet another front. I remind you, Israel's in the middle of an existential war with Iran and Gaza and Judea and Samaria and, Lebanon and Yemen, and the list just goes on, and now it's Syria. So Israel wants nothing less than to open another front, but being the moral country that Israel is, it feels it has a moral obligation, which it does, to protect its Druze brothers in Syria, and that's exactly what Israel's doing. I think 25 or 20 countries together joined a statement to demand that Israel end the Gaza war. Of course, utterly ridiculous, because no one is coming to Hamas with claims, and Hamas, as you know, has rejected every offering, every deal to end this war, including the latest one. Israel has accepted almost all of them. Hamas has rejected almost all of them. So not only do these 25 countries not come to Hamas and demand that they lay down their weapons and return the hostages, which would bring the end of the war, but no one's even talking to Egypt. And I'll remind you, Gaza has a border with Egypt. Egypt has not opened that border, has not let a single Palestinian or Gazan into its country. Silence, no one's saying a word. Again, the hypocrisy, no Jews, no news, whatever Israel does is bad, whatever the rest of the world does is okay, including Iran, of course, including China and Russia, and all of the other horrible regimes around the world who do not warrant any UN resolutions, even though Israel has gotten tens, hundreds of UN resolutions over the years. Hypocrisy. It's all hypocrisy and Jew hatred. That's what it is. But I actually want to talk about something else today, because I got to be honest, I'm getting a little fed up. And I'm going to give a huge disclaimer right now. If you're watching this and you're Jewish outside of Israel, this is not for the weak of heart. This is not going to make you happy. You're going to hate some of the things I'm about to say. But you know what? Get over it. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, Aliyah, immigration to Israel, the ingathering of the exiles. I want to address this topic from a few different standpoints. Let's start with the religious standpoint. If you're a religious Jew, if you're an observant Jew who believes in God and keeps the Torah, and you keep kosher, and you observe the Shabbos, then you should be living in Israel. Again, not going to get into this entire topic because it's a very broad topic, but most of the Torah commentary and the Torah authorities, with very few exceptions, list the settling and the living in the land of Israel as one of the 613 commandments. In fact, the Ramban famously, what's his name, Nachmanides, or whatever his name is in English, famously says that a Jew outside of Israel fulfilling the 613 commandments or fulfilling the Torah is just practicing for when they come home to Israel. So from a religious perspective, a Jewish individual belongs in Israel. Furthermore, when I speak to my friends outside of Israel, including a conversation I had last night with a Canadian podcaster, a Jewish Canadian podcaster, one of the things that a lot of these people, a lot of my friends and family who live outside of Israel try to do is justify their position by saying, Israel's not easy to live in, you can't make a living there, you have to cut your salary in half, Israelis are rude, the list just goes on and on. I'm so comfortable here. First of all, let's start with the fact that when speaking badly about the land of Israel, I'll remind you of the story of the spies. I'll remind you that 10 of the 12 spies came back speaking badly about Israel. 10 of these people were the leaders of the country, leaders of the nation, and they spoke badly about Israel, and they were punished. The entire nation was punished and continues to be punished because of that transgression. So before you start talking trash about Israel, remember that story. But to get to the actual points, I would say that any of the justifications / excuses that any Jew had traditionally, historically, to not move to Israel, they are all gone. It is no longer the case that you can't come to Israel and make a living. It is no longer the case that you come to Israel and lower your quality of life. It's just not. It's just factually not true. It is not in any way true that you can't find real estate, affordable real estate in Israel. Again, not true. If you're living in Tel Aviv, that's true. If you live in Jerusalem, that's true. Maybe Ra'anana. But there are endless, including where I live right now, Beit Shemesh, where there's tons of affordable real estate. So the whole, story of I can't come to Israel, I can't afford real estate, false. It's just a lie. You can't make a living here, false. If you're good at what you do and you're willing to work hard, you can make as much, if not more money in Israel. And that's speaking from experience. These are facts. So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here because we said we're talking about the religious aspect. From a religious aspect, you as an observant Jew, if you keep Shabbos and keep kosher, you need to be living in Israel. Period. Full stop. Now, let's talk about some of the things that I just mentioned, the technical or the individual challenges that a person might have. And I want to give another disclaimer, and that is no one's claiming that it's easy to pick up and move your life, a life that you built in America or Canada or anywhere else in the world, Europe, wherever. No one's saying it's easy to pick up and come here. And everything I'm about to say, take what I just said and wrap it in that. It's not easy, it's true. But you know what else is not easy? Being a Jew. I mean, back in the day when you had to work on Shabbos, would you have worked on Shabbos and said, it's not easy, I need to work? No, you wouldn't have. If you keep Shabbos, you're an observant Jew, you keep Shabbos. And so no one said it's going to be easy to be a Jew. No one said it's going to be easy to move to Israel. It is challenging. And specifically living in Israel, as we know, is accompanied by definition with Yisurin, which is suffering, let's call it. It is by definition something that is meant to be challenging. Why? Because if it wasn't challenging, like many things in Judaism, then everyone would do it. If it wasn't challenging to believe in God when bad things happen, then everyone would believe in God. Then it would be more of a knowledge thing versus a faith thing. And then we, as a people, as a nation, would not warrant any reward from God because we had no choice. So yeah, some things are hard, including being a Jew, including living in Israel. But the Gemara and the Scripture explains that Eretz Yisrael nicknames Yisurin. Living in Israel is by definition accompanied with challenges, let's call it. Not suffering, challenges. So again, take everything I'm about to say with that wrapping. It's supposed to be hard. That being said, the challenges, like I said before, that once existed of, Israel's a third world country, it's so hard to live there. Yeah, that used to be the case. When I came here, that was the case, but it's no longer the case. And I got to tell you that on a daily basis, I sit with people in Sarona and Tel Aviv, people who are either thinking about Aliyah or just made Aliyah, and I say to them, look around you, what do you see? And 100% of them say the same thing. We are in paradise here. Are we at war? Of course we're at war. I'm not dismissing that. I'm not sugarcoating that. But if you walk around the streets of Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or any other city in this country, I was just in Ashkelon for last Shabbat, and I was in Netanya the Shabbat before that. Unbelievable communities, vibrant, living life to the fullest. And that is the case throughout Israel. Again, with the challenge, yes, we're at war. But Israel is not even remotely close to what you think it is based on the media that you're watching. In fact, that is their goal, to make Israel seem like it's a war zone and our enemies are beating us when it could not be farther from the truth. So coming to Israel is no longer a sacrifice like it used to be. Of course, the whole argument that I'm comfortable here, do I even have to say it? You're no longer comfortable there. And if you think you are, then how do I say this nicely? Get your head out of the sand, right? I mean, what has to happen? And we've spoken about this, but what has to happen? Because from where I'm sitting, it's all happened. Jews being burned alive in the streets of America. I mean, anti-Semitic attacks on a daily basis, Jewish restaurants being vandalized, synagogues being burned and firebombed, anti-Semites in Congress at the highest levels of diplomacy. It's all happened. So at what point do you say, you know what, I'm no longer comfortable here? What do you have to wait? Like, what? You have to have a family member murdered or massacred? Or what has to happen for you to say, this is no longer my home? And, you know, I will say one thing, and that is, like I said before, this is sure to annoy some people, but why am I so okay with that? Because I wish someone would have annoyed my grandmother to leave Europe before the Holocaust. I wish someone would have annoyed all those people who died at the hands of the Nazis. And chances are, if you had come to these people in Europe and said, hey, you got to get out of here, you know, look where it's headed, they would have said what Americans are saying today, which is, I'm not going to run away. This is my home. We have to fight for this. Okay, you could be right or you can be alive. And if you had spoken to my grandmother now, in hindsight, knowing what happened, you would have told her, get the heck out. You would not have told her to stick around and fight. And so, sure, I get it. You want to stick around and fight. This is your home. Or you can realize that we are headed in a very dangerous direction and it's time to get out. Now, again, maybe you have elderly parents, maybe you have a kid with special needs. Everyone has individual circumstances that I'm not saying you need to pick up today, but make an exit strategy. Have a plan, because the genie's not going back in the bottle, right? It's out. Anti-Semitism is out, and never in history has it gotten better. Once it's out, it continues to get worse, and it's happening fast. So don't wait till it's too late. And what does that mean, too late? I don't know. They're not going to be concentration camps in America. I don't know what that means. But the only thing that hasn't happened, and even this has somewhat happened, is the fact that anti-Semitism is institutionalized, right? I mean, obviously in Nazi Germany it was institutionalized. We're not quite there yet, but we're pretty close, with Jews being beaten on the streets and cops standing by and doing nothing and arresting the Jew for fighting back. I mean, it's pretty close when we have Congress people who are full-blown, flaming, blatant anti-Semites. That's pretty close to being institutionalized. So, you know, I don't know exactly what my friends are waiting for, but either way, don't kid yourself that you're home there. Don't play the game of, I'm not running away. And don't play the game of, oh, but we need Jews in America. Do me a favor. You know, it's like confirmation bias. Like, you want to stay, then admit it. I want to stay. I like my BMW. I like my Lexus. I like my house in Woodmere. That's fine. I can't argue with that. But don't play the whole, we need Jews in America. That's just ridiculous. And again, you know who else said that? You know who else said we need to stay here because we need Jews in Egypt? 80% of the Israelites didn't leave Egypt. What did they tell themselves? God just performed these unbelievable miracles, and they stayed back. What did they tell themselves? Maybe we should stay here. We need Jews in Egypt. We don't want to anger the world's leading empire. Let's just stay here and be friends with our slave, whatever the word is. I mean, the people that held us slaves for 210 years. So the whole, we need to stay here, you're not the first to say it. It's been said in every generation, including, of course, in Europe. So no, you don't have to stay there. Yes, Israel and America have a partnership, and that will remain the case. And yeah, there are going to be Jews in America no matter what, but you need to come here, and you need to come here fast. And so all of the quote-unquote excuses, you could make as much money here, you could live in like a dream here, you could live like a king here, you can live making less money here, and I'm not going to get into the whole economic argument of where it's more expensive to live. All I'll say is, if you're an observant Jew who sends your kid to camp, and education is free here, if you are sending your kids to Jewish education, you know what that costs. Here, it's a few thousand shekel. And healthcare, a few thousand shekels. So yeah, cars are expensive here. Real estate in some places are expensive here. It's true. But I don't think that it's an accurate statement to make a blanket statement and say that living in Israel is more expensive than living outside of Israel. It's simply not the case. You can make money here. You can live like a king here. And of course, when I moved here 30 years ago, I basically had to abandon my friends. I mean, I had to cut off all friendships and relationships there because I was moving across the world. Today, with the internet, with FaceTime, with WhatsApp, with a 10-hour flight, you don't even have to do that. So the reality is, everyone has their individual circumstances, and you need, of course, to work on your schedule and when it's most convenient for you. But the key word there is most. There's never going to be a day where you're going to wake up and say, all right, I'm making Aliyah and there's no sacrifice, everything's easy. That's not going to happen. Or at least 99% of people are not going to experience that. There's going to be a sacrifice. Whatever that sacrifice is. If you're a doctor, you might sacrifice your salary. If it's something else, you might sacrifice the size of your house. It's going to be accompanied with a sacrifice of some kind. It's never going to be easy. And if you're waiting for it to be easy, then you're never going to make Aliyah. And I want to say something else, which is maybe the most offensive thing that I've said so far. And that is, and I'll die on this hill, if someone you know comes to Israel, makes Aliyah and leaves and doesn't make it here, 99, or I'd say 95% of the cases like that, they simply didn't want it badly enough. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you want it badly enough and you know you belong in Israel, you'll make it work. And I can tell you endless examples of people that moved here with nothing, with no money, with no contacts, and within weeks they were working and making a living, living in their newly acquired home or renting a home, whatever it may be. If you come here and you can't make it, chances are you didn't want it badly enough, which is a very important point, because making Aliyah has to be accompanied with a certain mindset, which is, I'm coming here. I had a conversation with someone who moved here. He wanted to, his wife didn't, and I think her first shop in the supermarket in Israel, some Israeli was rude to her, and she was like, I'm leaving, I don't want to stay here. I'm like, okay, you came here on the condition that everything will be easy and no challenges. Okay, I understand why you want to leave when an Israeli is rude to you. But if your mindset is this is your home and you need to come here, which should be your mindset, then you make it work. And yeah, there will be instances, some bureaucracy, there will be challenges. But if your mindset is this is your home, you will stay here, you will make it work. As far as making a living, if you're good at what you do and you're willing to work hard and you know how to work the system, very important point. Because for better or for worse, that's how Israel operates. It's all about, as we call it in Hebrew, protectia, connections. So if you are a person who's resourceful and knows how to work the system, you can make the impossible possible in Israel. And there are, again, hundreds of instances of cases that I can give you as an example. But the point is, if you're good at what you do and you're resourceful, you can make it here. You can live like a king here. I'm sitting here at a friend's house who moved here with no money and is living an amazing life, quality of life. And all my friends in my neighborhood and everyone I know basically in the Anglo community in Israel, with few exceptions, came here not with big money, with no connections, and they're living an incredible life here. So the time has come. It's no longer safe for you over there. And if that's not clear, then you need to open your eyes. Over here, we know who our enemies are. And that's an important point, because people will say, oh, it's not safe in America. It's not safe in Israel. You had 10/7. You had October 7th. Fair point. We had October 7th. But here we have an army that failed on October 7th. But this army's role and entire mission is to protect you. And again, yes, it failed on 10/7. And you know what it did? It learned from its mistakes. And hopefully 10/7 will never repeat itself. But here we have an entire army which is dedicated to protecting you. And here we know who our enemies are. By you, your next door neighbor could be your enemy. You wouldn't even know it. So yes, there are challenges when it comes to security and safety in Israel. I'm not going to lie or sugarcoat that. But there are fundamental differences here. Here, there's an army with a mission. By you, there is no army and there is no mission, and nobody cares about your safety. And again, if the events of the past couple of years have not proven that, then I don't know what will. It's all happened. And if I had told you 10 years ago that in 10 years there'll be anti-Semites in Congress, Jews will be burned alive, and everything else that you're experiencing, you would have said two things to me 10 years ago. You would have said, first of all, that will never happen in America. And the second thing is you would say, if that happens, I'm out of here. And here we are. So I don't know what you're waiting for, but ask yourself that question. What has to happen for you to read the writing on the wall and for you to say, this is no longer my home, I need to go home? Ask yourself that question, because that question and the answer is potentially a life and death situation. I hope to see you soon here on the other side of the ocean, and bye shawarma. So the big $1 million question is, I'm an observant Jew, I keep Shabbat, I keep kosher, but why should I come to Israel now? Why don't I wait for Mashiach to come? So first of all, I don't know exactly what our belief of Mashiach coming and then the ingathering of the exiles happening is, but I'll tell you something. What I think is the other way around. When the exiles come to Israel, Mashiach will come. So first of all, let's just put that aside and say, no one told you that you have to wait for Mashiach to come to Israel, unless you're, of course, the Neturei Karta, which I hope you're not. But why now? Do I even have to answer that question? We're fighting an existential war. Who do you think you are that you get to sit in your Woodmere, palace, mansion, driving your Porsche and your Ferrari, when we're fighting an existential war? Are you Jewish? Do you want to have our back? We need you here. Forget you need us. We need you here. What do you tell yourself at night that you're staying there in your comfortable home and we're fighting and sending our kids into war? So now is the time, because we're fighting an existential war and we need as many Jews here as possible. So now is the time, and the belief that we have to wait for Mashiach is, of course, I'm not sure exactly what it's based on. I know the Neturei Karta and some Satmar people believe that, but the reality is Hashem saying to us, that story with the roof. The man gets on the roof in the storm and says, I'll stay here, God will save us. And then he goes up to God after he drowns and said, why didn't you save me? God says, I sent a boat and I sent a helicopter. Same thing will happen here. We'll go up to God after 120 and say, why didn't you bring us to Israel? And God will say, I didn't bring you to Israel. I I sent you elal.com. I sent you Nefesh B'Nefesh. I made Israel a paradise. Even that didn't work. So I sent you anti-Semitism. So you shouldn't have any doubts that you're not home. Even that didn't work. So don't blame God. Don't wait for Mashiach to come. Come to Israel and God will say, okay, you guys are ready and Mashiach will come. It's the other way around. So another excuse, another question from the audience is, I live in wherever, Teaneck, Woodmere. I've done very well, and I send a ton of money to the FIDF and Magen David Adom and to the IDF, and I support financially, and that's as important as coming to Israel. Why do I have to get to Israel? Why do I have to come to Israel? I'll stay here and I'll support Israel financially. Again, we appreciate the financial support. I don't mean that sarcastically. We do, but you need to come here. Are you Jewish? If you're Jewish, you belong in Israel. So yes, the fear of making less money if you're a doctor or if you're a lawyer, okay, I get that. But is that really what drives you as a Jew? Because if that's what drives you as a Jew, then go work on Shabbos and don't keep kosher and don't do any of the things that you do as an observant Jew. You do them despite the challenge. And sometimes, yes, they cost you money, but you do them because you believe in God. And so, yes, we do appreciate the financial support, and no one's, God forbid, dismissing everything you've done for the state of Israel, but you need to be here. You need to be here because you need us, and you need to be here because we need you.